Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Backcourt Press NBA Talk. I am your co-host Hunter Mennick, along with my fellow co-host Zach Vinci. To my right, say hello.
What's up, everyone?
It's good to be back. We've been, it's been a week. We're trying to do it's been since Thursday actually. We did one on Thursday,
yes.
Which was a fun one, and we hope that the All-Star reserves would be announced by the podcast today, but unfortunately they have not been. So we're going to be giving our predictions on the All-Star players and especially reserves, because starters have been announced. There was a little discrepancy in some of the Western starters, but the starters have been announced, but the reserves have not been. So before we get started, follow us on Instagram at Backcourt Press, on Twitter at Backcourt Press _ and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're watching that on there, or on Facebook. And feel free to comment any opinions or any thoughts that you want to say regarding the All-Star game. And without further ado, if you've got anything to say real quick.
Ready to go.
Sounds good. Let's get right into it. So we'll start with the Eastern Conference, the one that hasn't been talked about that much when we talked about the All-Star starters. But, one player, that's true. The first player I'll start with, the point guard of the Eastern Conference All-Star game, Kyrie Irving. What are your thoughts on him being it?
Oh, absolutely deserved. I think, to me, that was the biggest no-brainer out of all the Eastern Conference guard spots. I think Kyrie deserved it the most. I know a lot of people will talk about James Harden or Bradley Beal or Jaylen Brown. I like all of those guys, but I think what Kyrie has done this season, especially having missed a season last year, coming right in, helping and lead the Nets to this. Right now, only a half a game back out of first in the Eastern Conference. He's been shooting ridiculous shooting splits. He's been scoring really well, and he's been probably their best closer too. A lot of times when the games come down to the line in the Nets, it's Kyrie getting that last shot. I know a lot of people were speculating which of the three would normally be in that situation, and Kyrie's been stepping up a lot for the Nets this year, really making the Celtics look bad once again. I mean, this last month for me has been beautiful as a Sixers fan. Just watching everything the Celtics have done the last 5 years, just completely start to fall apart. I've loved it. Kyrie, keep balling in Brooklyn. Keep showing Boston why they made a mistake in giving you up.
Now, if there was a different point guard that you think would be just the deserving spot, who else do you think could have been in the running for this?
Honestly, out east, most of the top guards I think this season have been shooting guards, but I think that the biggest snub in the guard spot has got to be James Harden. He's been the best playmaker in the league this season. His scoring has taken a bit of a dip, but that's because he's been a lot more active distributing the ball. He's been dishing it really well to Durant, Kyrie, Joe Harris, a lot of those other guys on the Nets. I think Kyrie definitely deserved it over him, but I mean, I wouldn't have been shocked if we saw two Brooklyn Nets starters from the same team, because those two, I think, truly are the two best guards in the East. Obviously, Beal got the nod over Harden for his scoring, and I understand having the leading scorer in the NBA as a starter in the All-Star game. Definitely makes sense to me. But I would have had no issues if Harden had gotten in over Bradley Beal.
Fair. That was the next player we're going to talk about. Switching over to the Washington Wizards. Bradley Beal averaging around 32 points per game now, and the Wizards are on a 5-game win streak. Let's talk about that for a little bit. So you said you think Bradley Beal definitely deserved the nod. Let's hear your case for Bradley Beal over James Harden.
Personally, I think if I was the one making the selection, I would have gone with the two Nets guards. But I definitely have no problem with Beal being over Harden. Like I said, it's hard to leave the leading scorer in the entire NBA out of being an all-star starter, especially probably the Eastern Conference guards is the weakest out of the four spots. Eastern West guard forward. I think Eastern guard is the easiest one to be an all-star in. So Beal's leading the league in scoring. Pretty easy choice for them. Although, honestly, I think that Harden and guys like Zach LaVine, Jaylen Brown all had a case as well, because other than Beal scoring, all those other guys have been having much better seasons. I remember seeing yesterday Zach LaVine is only about 3 points per game less than Bradley Beal right now, but is ahead of him in pretty much every other major stat. So I know a lot of Bulls fans were complaining about Beal being over LaVine, and the Bulls even have a better record than the Wizards too. So I think that's part of it. But overall, I'm not going to complain. I know Bradley Beal missed the All-Star game last year despite averaging nearly 30 points per game, which made a lot of people upset. So I think he's definitely deserved the nod this year.
Yeah, Brett, you could also make the case that Zach LaVine's a better closer than Bradley Beal this season. We've seen Zach LaVine in the fourth quarter, I think, is leading or in the top three at least in fourth quarter points.
He's
Second,
number two. He's number two in clutch scoring, only behind Damian Lillard right now.
which is just, and yeah, that's a name that we'll bring up a little bit later. But no,
Absolutely.
Zach LaVine's been playing incredible. And if you're gonna talk all-star starters, Jaylen Brown's defense, in my opinion, could have
Absolutely.
brought him into the starters. I know for a while when the Wizards were really, really doing bad, I know they just went on this little win streak, but before that, I think a lot of people had Jaylen Brown as almost a lock by the way he was playing throughout the first 3 weeks to a month of the season as an all-star starter by averaging around 20, 25, 26 points per game and playing just incredible defense. So what do you think about Jaylen Brown?
I think Jaylen Brown absolutely deserves to be on an all-star team. In my opinion, I think he deserves it more than Jason Tatum this year. I think I'm going to end up having both of them in my reserve spots for the East, although it's questionable whether the Celtics deserve two. But if they're going to go with just one, I think it's got to be Jaylen Brown. Offensively and defensively, he's been stellar this year, especially at the start of the year. He was averaging nearly 28 points per game through the first month of the season. He's kind of dipped off a little bit lately, as has the entire Celtics team. Not sure if that has to do with Kemba Walker coming back or Jason Tatum shooting struggles maybe affected the rest of the team. But I think Jaylen Brown is a perfect candidate this year to be an all-star reserve.
I completely agree. So I have a
question for you now, because if that knocks out five guards in the East, right? If you got Beal and Kyrie as the starters, and then Harden, LaVine, and Jaylen in the backcourt. Normally, you only see about roughly five guards each year from each conference making it, which means that's leaving out the most notable name, Trae Young. Do you think Trae Young deserves to be an all-star?
Oh, it's tough. I don't know if I can really say Trae Young deserves it over those guys. It feels like Bradley Beal has just, it feels like Zach LaVine has just put this Chicago Bulls team on his back and just ran with it. And the Bulls possibly right now have a better record than the Atlanta Hawks, which is crazy to say because they do actually by just one win and one loss. But Trae Young, although he's putting up the stats, his game just doesn't translate at all. And you see the stuff outside of scoring and I guess assists. For Zach LaVine, he's way better on the defensive side, and that's saying something because Zach LaVine's not even that good of a defender. And with the struggles the Atlanta Hawks have had, I just don't know if they're capable. They should have an all-star in this. I know Trae Young was a starter last year, but a lot of people were, saying I don't know about that because guys like Bradley Beal averaging 35 points per game missed out on the all-star game entirely. But Trae Young, it would be close. Because of the defense, I'd probably have to keep him out for Zach LaVine and just, 29 points, 29, 5-5, and leading that Chicago Bulls team to an 8 seed right now is just absolutely incredible. So I'm going to give the nod to Zach LaVine over Trae Young, that's a tough. Leaving Trae Young out sounds crazy.
Yeah, I agree with you completely on that. I'm not the biggest Trae Young fan. I don't know if we've been over that extensively here, but his game is just I'm not the biggest fan of it. But that raises a question because I've seen a lot of this on the internet and in the media lately. Do you think Trae Young deserves to be in the All-Star game because he's more fun to watch? And you think that he will make the All-Star game more entertaining because of his style of play? Or do you think that shouldn't be a factor at all?
To me, the All-Star game is the best players throughout the season. You look at things like your record. You look at things like how many points you're putting up, how many it's more statistical. And so, yes, Trae Young he'll shoot. If he went to the All-Star game, he came off the bench, he'll shoot a couple of 40-footers, he'll just do his thing. But at the same time, it's not just about the game, it's about the season. And his season so far, he's having a fantastic year, no doubt, averaging 27 points and roughly 10 assists. But I just don't see, although his style of play is fun to watch, I don't blame fans for thinking that. The All-Star game's about, the better player. And to me, the better players this season have been Zach LaVine and Jaylen Brown. So, and that's even counting out Ben Simmons, who has come back and been a fantastic player.
I was just going to ask. So that leaves, if you count those six guys, it's probably five of those six. I mean, well, obviously two are already in, but if you're looking at the reserves, three of those other four are almost locks to get in, if not four, if they somehow use both wild card spots on guards. But that leaves probably the three most notable guards left out of the mix, and that would be Ben Simmons, who you just mentioned, Malcolm Brogdon for the Pacers, who had a great start to the year, and then also Colin Sexton, who was balling pretty much all year, and then I know the Cavs have fallen off. Those three, personally, I don't don't think either of those three need to be in the All-Star game this year. I think they're all fringe players. What do you think?
I'll give it time with Colin Sexton. I know the Cavs were on this big hot streak to start the season, but going into they've lost, I believe it's a bunch of games
10 in a row.
straight
10 in a
now.
row.
Yeah, 10 in a row is crazy after the start that they had, and I just can't. You can't justify 23 points per game and a really, really bad record over a guy like Zach LaVine who's just balling. You mentioned, Ben Simmons, who Ben Simmons has missed a little bit of time this year, along with the fact that his offensive game just has not looked that strong. There's been moments in games. I know he had his career high just about a week ago, but besides that game, we know to start the season, he just looked very, very dull offensively, wasn't shooting the ball, wasn't even being aggressive in the Ben Simmons we know. So although I'd argue that he's one of the best defenders in the NBA, I don't think you could put him in the All-Star game just for the pure fact that Jaylen Brown has been an incredible defender as well. And if you're going to have the defender, you got to even out with offense. And Jaylen Brown's offense is miles right now above Ben Simmons. And then the last guy you mentioned, Malcolm Brogdon. The Pacers have not really fallen off, but they've just dealt with a lot of injuries, and they've been staying around that 5-6 seed, but just around a 500 record. And Malcolm Brogdon, to me, although he's really done a good job leading that Pacers team, I don't think he's the all-star that the Pacers are going to the Pacers are going to represent in the All-Star game. So
absolutely.
Those are just, they're fantastic players. They all deserve it. I think Colin Sexton, give it time, he'll eventually be an all-star. Even a guy like Malcolm Brogdon could possibly be an all-star in the future. And Ben Simmons, we got years of him being good. So
absolutely. Yeah. One more thing about Simmons before we move on. Doc Rivers mentioned a couple days ago that he said Ben Simmons should get the All-Star nod over guys like Zach LaVine and Trae Young because putting up numbers on bad teams is more so empty stats, where Ben Simmons is contributing more to winning. I know we touched on this a little bit last week with Dame and Luka, but do you think that Simmons should have more of an advantage over Young and LaVine because that he's on a much more successful team, or do you think that shouldn't really play much of a role?
I would say to an extent. I think, winning is very valuable. But when you look at the All-Star game, especially the way that the voting was this year, you can definitely see that they did not take into account team record as much as you would expect them to. I know Damian Lillard is, top 3, top 5 in MVP voting right now, and he didn't even get an All-Star starter. Yeah. And Bradley Beal is starting over James Harden, where James Harden's having a way better team record than Bradley Beal. So if you're going to look at All-Star game, because there's 24 guys that end up making, I believe 12 per team that make the All-Star game, you're gonna look at more individual stats than team record. And I don't blame Doc Rivers for saying that. I think it should be looked at more like that. I'd probably give him the nod. He'd be right there with Trae Young. I don't know which direction I would go, but definitely not over Zach LaVine, and I feel like Zach LaVine's been fantastic.
For sure. No, I gotta agree with that one. As I'm a huge Ben Simmons fan, and I'm not a Trae Young fan at all. And I think any smart NBA fan who watches the games and knows what they're talking about would realistically take Ben Simmons over Trae Young if you're trying to build a winning basketball team. But when it comes to the All-Star game, I think Trae Young has just had a lot better numbers this year. He's had a lot better stats, and I know the committee always tries to represent almost as many teams as they can. They try to avoid getting multiple guys from the same teams. Obviously, Joel Embiid is already representing the Sixers, so I understand where they're coming from when you have a guy like Trae Young who could represent the Hawks and will definitely be the only player that is in consideration from Atlanta. Same with LaVine for the Bulls. So I get where it's coming. I get where Doc Rivers is coming from, but I think I'm honestly going to disagree with him on that one.
Yeah, another player that we didn't mention, Fred VanVleet, after this Raptors hot streak, I could see him being in contention. I don't think he'd make it. I'd put him in the same. I'd probably put him above Colin Sexton, who you mentioned, just for the pure fact that he's been dominating offensively. Yeah. But the guard, it's gonna be tough. But yeah,
it's interesting to think about when you look at the Raptors, who have jumped all the way up into the 5 seed in the East after the win against Philly the other day, that they have really 0 players in All-Star contention. Siakam, I don't think, is anywhere near the top of the forwards list right now. And as we just mentioned, VanVleet is behind a number of other guards for the guard spot. And it's really interesting. Normally, when you have a top 5 team, especially in a conference like the East where there's only 5 teams with with a winning record right now. It's shocking that you got a team that's that good that has really no one in All-Star contention.
Exactly. Zach Lowe actually on ESPN came out with an article, and he actually has 4 backup guards making it in the All-Star game, which would end up being Jaylen Brown, James Harden, Zach LaVine, and he threw Ben Simmons in there, which I think is very interesting. It depends on how many forwards and guards they end up selecting. If they end up doing one extra guard, it'll be a toss-up to me between Trae Young and Ben Simmons, but it'd be interesting to see who ends up getting it.
Hey, if any team in the East deserves more than one player besides Brooklyn, because they're going to have 3, it's got to be Philly. I don't think there's any team in the East that should have more than one person other than if it's going to be anyone, it's going to be Philly because they deserve it. They deserve it more than anyone.
I agree. Philly or Boston, just because those two are dominating the NBA right now. Even though they're losing.
Are they?
Statistics-wise, they're dominating the NBA. Record-wise, it says differently.
I guess we can use that to transition into forwards then?
Yes, we can. That's perfect. So, the starters have already come out. The leader of this Eastern Conference team is going to be Kevin Durant. I guess we'll get into that a little later, even though I think we both can disagree on that. And Giannis Antetokounmpo, very well deserving. He's been having such an underrated, fantastic year.
Oh my God.
It's so funny how his name just completely dipped from MVP.
Put him in the MVP convo.
I agree.
Giannis is balling this year.
I agree. Now, I think those forwards were undeniably the 2 best in the Eastern Conference right now. And then there is a little bit of a dip, but we're going to see players possibly. Oh, you want to?
I was going to say before, it's just do the whole front court together. Embiid's the 3rd. I mean,
exactly.
Right. I don't know if that's what you were going for, but.
Oh, yeah, no, that's true. Because there's not really going to be another center after Joel Embiid.
Yeah.
So, real quick, thoughts on Kevin Durant getting it over Joel Embiid for the Eastern Conference and MVP leader?
I just think it's such a missed opportunity that for the first time, I think, since probably the mid-'90s when you had guys like Shaq, David Robinson, Hakeem Olajuwon, Patrick Ewing, this is the first time we've really seen 2 centers dominating the league and arguably putting forward the 2 best performances. I personally think Embiid and Jokic have been the 2 best players in the NBA this year. They probably would be my top 2 MVP candidates if the Nuggets were doing a little bit better than they are. But they've both been fantastic. I think this would have been the perfect opportunity to have 2 opposing centers, guys that have been going at it for a couple of years now as the 2 best centers in the league. They could have been the all-star captains. I think that would have been really interesting to see, especially with the new draft format that we started a couple of years ago. We've never seen 2 centers being to select the teams. So I feel like this would have been the perfect year for that. But no, they had to give it to LeBron because it's always got to be LeBron. Durant. And Durant, I think they gave it to Durant because they gave it to LeBron. But
I agree.
No matter. I think it definitely should have been Embiid and Jokic. What can you do? I'm still excited for it nonetheless. And exactly. I think overall the Eastern Conference got it right with Durant, Giannis, and Embiid. I don't think there was any other options for the starting front court.
Without a doubt. So players that unfortunately did not get the starting bid and it will be competing for that reserve spot are players. Keep in mind, there's a lot of different players here. You got players like Jason Tatum, Bam Adebayo, Julius Randle, Chris Middleton. We got a bunch of different players. Is there any locks for you?
Okay, so you mentioned 4, and normally there's about 4 that make it. I'm going to mention one more that you didn't, that I think is going to be a lock, and that's Domantas Sabonis.
Oh, yes,
I think Sabonis should 100% make it. The Pacers are right now top 5 in the Eastern Conference. Sabonis has been putting up some monster numbers. He's been arguably the 2nd best big man in the East after Embiid. To me, I don't even think it's a contest. I think he should 100% get one of the reserve spots, especially because more likely than not, Brogdon will not be playing in the All-Star game, maybe as an injury reserve. But I think Sabonis has got to get it 2 years in a row. We see the impact he has on this Pacers team when he's on the floor. They're much better than the team we saw in the bubble last year without Sabonis, and his impact on the floor is huge. So I think he's got to be in it, which means obviously you're cutting out, if he's going to be in it, you're going to cut out one of those other 4 that you mentioned. Right now, I think it's between Jason Tatum and Chris Middleton. I think I think Julius Randle, Sabonis, and Bam have got to be locks with what they've done this season.
So you're real quick. You're gonna give me your reasoning, right, for taking Bam Adebayo over Nikola Vucevic.
Defensive impact, I think for sure. Bam Adebayo is easily, I think, the best defensive big man in the Eastern Conference, and that's including Joel Embiid.
They're gonna say this in the league. I was like, whoa.
No, in the Eastern Conference. If you just look at his defensive numbers and his defensive impact, it's far surpasses anything Nikola Vucevic has done. I know Vucevic has had some pretty good offensive numbers, but overall, Bam Adebayo is just, I think, a much more talented center. And the Heat are a better team than the Magic. The Magic have been pretty brutal this year, one of the probably bottom 5 team in the league right now. Vucevic has been great, but if I'm gonna pick an all-star from the Heat or the Magic, I'm gonna take the guy from the Heat, who overall I think is the more talented player. What do you got on that?
No, I agree with you. I think in any other year, Nikola Vucevic would be almost an all-star lock in the reserves because of the fact he's just been the only player for that Magic team. His offensive skill set has been fantastic. You could argue him and Bam are the 3rd and 4th best centers in the NBA this year. And obviously there's a little bit of a dip behind Jokic and Embiid. But Vucevic's offensive skill set is just, I think it's been fantastic this year. His ability to stretch the floor. I think if he was on a different team and he ended up, there's been trade rumors with Vucevic for, it seems like forever now. If he were to be on a different team, I could see him and putting up these numbers. I could see him being a lock for the reserve spot. But with the way that the Magic have just been struggling recently, I can't justify to put him over Bam Adebayo.
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure. It's tough for Vucevic this year because, as we've seen, he's been having a great season, putting up some really good numbers. Yes. Just really competitive front court this year. I mean, those 3 starters. I mean, normally you don't get starters as good as Embiid, Giannis, and Durant in the All-Star game.
Yeah,
so that's ridiculous to begin with. And then we've seen a number of other guys balling out. Like we said, who would have thought Julius Randle would be a near all-star lock at this point in the season?
He has to be.
I mean, if you asked me at the end of last season if Sabonis would repeat, I'd be like, no, he's probably a one-hit all-star wonder like Vucevic was. Even Bam, I don't think would have been a lock coming at the end of the last season. I know he had a great playoff last year, but normally it's hard for big men to repeat. Normally, if you look at throughout NBA history, big men do not, unless they're like top tier big men who are in it like every single year. Normally, it's the bottom big men normally rotate in and out. So big props to both Sabonis and Bam for what I think are both going to secure a spot for their 2nd consecutive year.
Exactly. So that's going to leave, another possibly 1 to 2 spots for the reserves in the front court. And I think that's one of those spots has to be the player you mentioned, the New York Knicks leader, and what every New York Knicks fan will say, in MVP contention, Julius Randle. What do you think about that?
He has to be. He is the only player in the league besides Luka Doncic that is leading his team in every single, the 3 major stats: points, rebounds, and assists.
Yes.
The Knicks are a playoff team, easily overachieving way more than anyone expected them to. Honestly, I'm taking Randle over pretty much any of those other reserves, front court reserves. I love what Sabonis has done. I love what Bam has done. I think you got to take Randle over both of them right now.
I agree with that.
The Knicks, we both had the Knicks in the bottom 2 at the start of the season in our preseason rankings. And Julius Randle has been their number 1 option offensively and almost one of their best guys defensively too. And they're a top, I think, 7 seed in the East right now, which is completely unheard of from the Knicks. So I think if Randle doesn't get in, then there's something wrong with the committee.
I agree. So that's going to leave possibly 1 more spot for the Eastern reserves, which to me is down to 3 players. One of them is not, I feel like, is an near all-star lock every year. And this year he dealt with COVID stuff. So those 3 players are going to be obviously Jason Tatum, who we talked about. We got Chris Middleton, who has been underrated as always. And Jimmy Butler, a player that I don't think anyone, he's been dealing with stuff, but he's averaged, it seems like, a triple-double over the past 2 weeks. So if you had to choose one of those 3 players to make the All-Star team, who is it going to be?
I mean, it's hard with COVID and injuries and stuff because when Jimmy Butler is on the court, in my opinion, he's a top 3 player in the Eastern Conference. Top 4 after all the Nets guys coming in this year screwed me up. Top 4 right after Embiid, Giannis, and Durant. I mean, I think Jimmy Butler is amazing. and we saw it last year in the finals. We've seen it this year. That Miami Heat team is completely different when Butler is on the floor. That said, Butler has missed more than half the season this year, and with a lot of other guys turning in incredible performances across the board. And I think the Heat are already going to be represented by Bam Adebayo. I don't necessarily think Jimmy Butler is going to come close to making it this year, unfortunately. But in most years, he's a lock. And I think when it comes down to that last spot between Tatum and Chris Middleton, I think it could go either way. Tatum is definitely the better player. And Tatum has been probably having a slightly better season than Middleton so far. That said, then it comes down to, do the Celtics really deserve to have two guys in the All-Star game this year? And Tatum has been struggling a lot recently with his shooting. Hasn't had a great couple of weeks. Ever since COVID, he definitely hasn't looked like he's the same player out there. And then Chris Middleton, meanwhile, is quietly having an amazing season. He's once again arguably the most efficient player in the league. An amazing second option for Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Bucks are top 3 team in the East once again.
Yep.
It's close.
It's tough.
You want to go with the better player, you got to go with Jason Tatum. But if you're going with who I think is having the better season, I think it's got to be Chris Middleton. To me, it's flip a coin. I think you can't go wrong either way.
I completely agree. And you could even throw, if they're going to do three front court players and then 4 guards, I could see both of these guys missing out on the All-Star game, and possibly a guy like Trae Young or Ben Simmons end up sneaking in and taking their spot. Mm-hmm. To me, sure. I think Jason Tatum's just, he's the fan favorite kind of guy. He's a player that I think everyone would want to see in the All-Star game. And I know we talked about that because with Trae Young and that, you would want to see, but at the same time, Jason Tatum's numbers this season and his clutch just performance. I know he had a really, really clutch performance against the New Orleans Pelicans the other day, even though him and Zion were going toe-to-toe, and they still lost. But it was a fun game to watch. And I think, to me, if we're going to be realistic here, I could definitely see Tatum probably sneaking in over Chris Middleton just for the fact that his name's Jason Tatum and he's still 19 years old. Yeah. But I think Chris Middleton definitely does deserve the nod as well.
The Celtics get 2 All-Stars, and the Sixers and the Bucks both get 1. It's going to be very disappointing, but, what can you do? I mean, Tatum and Brown are fantastic. I can't sell that. I can't come out here and say that either of those two are the problem in Boston. I just think everything else is. You can't hate on Tatum and Brown. Those two are both fantastic basketball players, and I think if they both are in the All-Star game, I'm not going to complain about it.
And don't forget about Tobias Harris. A low-key sneak for the All-Star game.
Hey, I would love for my boy Toby to be in there. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen.
But hey,
he's been great.
He's been great.
He's been great. I think Tobias Harris might be the best player in the league who's never made an All-Star game and probably will never make an All-Star game. I mean, I know you got a lot of young guys who have never made it before, and everyone knows they'll make it in the next couple of years. I don't see Tobias Harris ever making an All-Star game. And he's going to consistently be like a 20-point per game scorer for like almost 8 to 10 seasons in the league and never make an All-Star game. Very disappointing, but good for Toby.
Exactly. So that'll transition us right into the Western Conference. There's our Eastern Conference predictions. If you're still here with us, thank you for watching. Drop a comment on what you think about our Eastern Conference, reserves and starters. So moving on to the Western Conference. We'll start straightforward with the guards. We got a crazy thing happening in the starting lineup of the Western Conference, and that is Steph Curry being the point guard and Luka Doncic being the shooting guard of the starting lineup. And a player who a lot of people are very mad about, and Damian Lillard, did not make it. Give me your thoughts on Luka over Dame.
I mean, we discussed this at length last week, and I gave all of my opinions as to why I thought Dame should be over Luka. Look, I'm not going to argue. Luka has been amazing this year. Luka, I mean, it's really incredible to put into perspective that he's 22 years old, 20 something like that, 22 years old
right
in his third season in the NBA, and he's having a disappointing season, dropping 28, 9-9, with his team as the 9th seed in a very, very difficult Western Conference, just because they don't have a winning record. And his second best player in Kristaps Porzingis has been atrocious. Look, Luka, I apologize for the disrespect from last week. Luka's been amazing this year. He 100% deserves the All-Star spot. I just think I was a little upset I was a little upset Dame did because I think it's hard when you have three guys who deserve it, right?
Yes.
Curry, Dave, and Luka, all three of them deserve an all-star starter spot, and only two can get it. Now, I think Dame was slightly more deserving than Luka, but nonetheless, Luka 100% deserves that spot with what he's been doing this year, with the expectations on him. I mean, people are just mad that he's not top 5 in MVP race. He's 22, and he's nearly averaging a triple-double. People got to relax. Luka's amazing. Just appreciate what he's doing right now. I think people were just expecting him to make a bigger jump than he did. He's kind of playing like the same player he was last year, which is like, oh no, a top 10 player. He's not good enough. I don't know. Luka's been great. Dame's been great. They both deserve it. I'm not going to complain over one or the other.
I completely agree. I think this comes to show that when doing all-star ballots, they don't care as much about record. They care more about individual play. And so when we're talking earlier, do the Boston Celtics deserve a spot, even though with their record, Tatum will probably make it over Middleton, just for the pure fact he's averaging better statistics points-wise and probably rebounds as well. But no, Damian Lillard's been fantastic. If he's not in your top 5 in MVP race right now, I'm just shocked, because it possibly even top 3 of how amazing he's been.
And that's serious coming from you.
I know. I hate saying that. And you know what I do love to say though? The fact that the debate was over Damian Lillard or Luka Doncic, because Steph Curry was a lock for an all-star starter this season. His performance. I know Dame has been fantastic, and I'd probably put Dame even over Steph Curry in the MVP race for the pure fact that the Portland Trailblazers are winning games without their second and third best player on the court right now. And it's been heavily Damian Lillard. But Steph Curry, if we're going to go off statistics and just his presence on the court, you can make the case he's the third best player in the NBA this season. And he has just been incredible with coming off that injury, not playing at all last year, averaging 30 points per game, leading that Warriors team with Kelly Oubre, who struggled for the first half of the season so far. And, you got guys, we don't have a center right now in Wiseman and Looney going down. Steph Curry was a lock for the starting spot, and that is, to me, without debate.
Absolutely.
So, if we're gonna,
the reserves is where it gets nearly impossible.
I'll read off some players that should possibly be reserves in the guard play. You got 2 Utah Jazz players, Donovan Mitchell and Mike Conley. 2 Phoenix Suns players, Devin Booker and Chris Paul. You got and then to me, there's only 3 other guys that are all younger players that could definitely deserve it, and that is De'Aaron Fox, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and John Morant. You're telling me you got to pick 3 or 4 of those guys to make the All-Star game? Oh, actually, just 3 of them or 2 of them, because because Damian Lillard's already a lock.
Dame. Yeah.
Oh, and Paul George. If we're gonna count him as a guard or a forward, I don't know where they're gonna.
Is Paul George counted as a? I'm gonna shelf that and call Paul George a forward for now.
Okay, that's what I was thinking.
As we'll see soon, the forward pool in the Western Conference is very, very weak outside of the starters. So, I think more guards are gonna end up making it than forwards. I gave it in the Eastern Conference. I gave it a 3-4 split. Guards 3, 4 forwards. I'm going to give it a 4-3 split in this. 4 guards and 3 forwards.
Yes, me too.
With Lillard being one of those guards. So if you're gonna use him, that leaves 3 other guards, and you mentioned 7 guys who all deserve it. Right off the bat, I'm going to eliminate 3 guys who I think are right there, but not quite yet. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, another great season from him. But the Thunder are still a bottom 4 or 5 team in the league. He's been doing really well. He's been scoring the ball well.
23, 5, and 7 on the year this year.
And his efficiency has been okay. But there's better guards in the West, both talent wise and having better seasons. In the Eastern Conference, Shai might have made it. I don't know. He would have been. I think Shai would have been up there in like the Trae Young conversation with in the Eastern Conference. Unfortunately, the West is even more difficult, so I got to eliminate Shai. I'm also going to eliminate Mike Conley too.
Yeah,
I know everyone wants Mike Conley in there for the Jazz because of how good the Jazz have been, but the Jazz are already going to be represented by 2 other guys, like almost locks, I think. So I don't think Conley's going to be able to slip in as the third. That said, I'm not going to take away from what Conley's done this season. He's had a huge bounce back year from a disappointing campaign last season. He's looking a lot more like a Grizzlies self out there, and the way he's distributing the ball and leading the offense is unparalleled by just about everyone in the league besides a certain point guard for the Phoenix Suns.
Team's best in the West as well, so you can't really deny him being in the conversation.
And then the third one I'm going to eliminate is a guy who is one of my favorite point guards in the league, Ja Morant.
Yeah, you have to.
Unfortunately, I got to take out Ja. He's missed a portion of the season that a lot of these other guards have not missed. And while he's been playing as great as he's been, his numbers don't quite add up to what some of the other guys are that have been doing. And I can't fault the record, though. I know some people might say, oh, he's not in the playoffs right now. I can't fault that because with the team he's got around him, he's been doing the best he can. The fact that they're at 500 now is very impressive. Unfortunately, I think Ja's going to fall just short this year. That said, we'll see him in plenty of all-star games in the future.
Without a doubt.
So with those three eliminated, that leaves four.
Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker, Chris Paul,
and De'Aaron Fox. And three of those four are going to make it. And honestly, I don't care which one gets cut because I think any of them deserve it. I think right now you can count in Donovan Mitchell as a lock, being the leading scorer on the best team in the league. There's no way that they're going to cut him. I think he's just as much of a lock as Dame is at this point. He's been,
he's shot 39% on threes this year, and he's not even known to be a three-point shooter. And he's jacking up threes with that Utah offense just shoots and shoots and shoots, and they've been fantastic and efficiently. I completely agree with you that Donovan Mitchell has to be a lock.
Mitchell's got to be in it, and then that leaves you got the two Suns guards and you got De'Aaron Fox. What I think is going to happen is I think De'Aaron Fox is going to get cut because the Sacramento Kings just don't get the recognition they deserve. Well, the Kings deserve no respect. Fox himself deserves respect for carrying that half-assed franchise to what they've been doing. But the Kings have been falling apart a little bit, even though Fox is still continuing to put up some pretty miraculous numbers. The Kings themselves have not been able to get it done, losing, I think, 5 of their last 6 or something along those lines. So I think Fox is going to end up getting cut, but I really do hope he makes it because he's put forth the campaign. If he's on any other team in the league, I think Fox is a lock. It's just that he happens to be on the most trash franchise in the NBA.
Yeah.
Which that means I'm putting both Phoenix guards in, which I think they both deserve. So it's hard to leave either one of them out. And I don't see either one of them making it without the other because Devin Booker has been, especially in the last couple of weeks, been scoring the ball at a different level. I think he's averaging 29 points per game in the last 2 weeks or something along those lines.
Incredible.
And the Phoenix Suns have been on a roll. This is looking like Bubble Booker all over again. And then Chris Paul he has that impact on winning that no other point guard in the league has right now. Chris Paul's got to be in there. I think I know a lot of people saying he turned the Suns around. I don't know if it's that or if it's just Devin Booker playing better. We saw them go 8-0 in the bubble last year without CP3. So I don't know how much of an effect CP3 has, but you just watch the Suns and it's immediately apparent how important he is to that team. His distributing and his scoring and his defense. I think CP3's got to be in there especially for a top 4 team in the West right now, top 5 team in the league.
Yeah, I've got a couple things to note on that. Chris Paul is shooting 97% from the free throw line this year. He's leading the league 97%, which is just incredible to me to think that Chris Paul at this age is leading that Phoenix Suns team, that we haven't ever talked about them being in the playoffs in the past 5 years that Devin Booker's been around. And now they're a lock for the playoffs and the team that no one's going to want to go up against in the playoffs. So to me, if you had to choose Chris Paul or Devin Booker making the All-Star game, and you only had one spot and those two are out of it, who are you gonna take? It's tough.
It's very tough. I think I'm gonna go Devin Booker, but I think it's so close. I was
gonna say Chris Paul.
I know. Chris Paul has that impact on winning that I've talked about that is just undeniable. But I feel like if you're just going to sit down and you're going to watch a Phoenix Suns game, I think at least my biggest takeaway is that Devin Booker is normally the best player on the court. As much as I love Chris Paul and what he's done, I think Devin Booker is just a slightly better player overall. Obviously, he's younger, of course. If we're taking prime CP3, that's a different story.
He's a starter.
Just where they're at currently in their career, Devin Booker is the main guy on that team, and CP3 is is right behind him as the number 2. But I can't be mad either way. They're both great.
That's fair. I have another question for you. You said you hope De'Aaron Fox doesn't make it, right? But De'Aaron Fox is right there at the edge. Now, another player we mentioned is Shea. The Sacramento Kings have one less loss than the Oklahoma City Thunder as we speak. And Shea is now averaging more points, more assists, and just a little bit less rebounds. Does that change your thought process at all if you're going to throw Shea in there?
No, because of the eye test. I just think this season De'Aaron Fox has been more impressive than Shea. I know Fox also got off to a bit of a slow start first couple games of the season, which might have been dragging down his averages. And defensively, I think Fox is better than Shea as well. It's close. It's close. I gotta go with Fox over Shea though, just because eye test. I think Fox is doing more with less. I know neither team is good at all, but the Thunder at least are a competent organization. I mean, the Kings are a disaster. Luke Walton is the coach, which is already a red flag at the start. So I just think Fox has more obstacles, I guess, thrown his way than Shea does. But I don't think you can be mad with either of them.
That's fair. We mentioned Shea, possibly De'Aaron Fox not making it, and a player like John Morant not making it. Those are 3 players we will probably see in the All-Star game for the next years to come because they're so young and they're so talented.
Once you get CP3, Steph Curry out of here, hogging all these All-Star appearances, then you might start to see them.
Exactly. So there's our front or our backcourt talk. It's going to be very close to see who ends up making it. If they want to put those 2 Phoenix Suns players in there, it's going to be a wild ride. Moving on to the front court, we said if there's going to be 4 guards, then we got, the only 3 forwards that are in contention of making it. We got a bunch of good players in here. Unfortunately, Anthony Davis, who would most likely end up making the team, is going to be injured for the game and will not make it. So he will get replaced by someone else. There's a player that plays for the Utah Jazz named Rudy Gobert, who to me is a definite lock for that reserve spot. He's one of the 2 locks I have, including Paul George. If we're going to consider him a forward with the Clippers playing the way they are and Paul George playing the way he is, to me, he's also got to be a lock. But that leaves one other spot for a bunch of incredible names, including, Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, DeMar DeRozan, you could throw in there. And I don't think he'll be healthy by the time, but if Christian Wood was still healthy, I'd have to throw him in contention for the spot. So, yeah, out of these players, it's going to be very close. I'm personally just the impact that he has on the court and his jump from year 1 to year 2. I'm going to take Zion Williamson to be that third player, but that's no disrespect to DeMar. I think he's DeMar DeRozan. He won't even get talked about for this spot, in my opinion, but I think he really, really deserves it. His playmaking ability and just his progression throughout this season and that Spurs team has been just incredible. Brandon Ingram, arguably the number 1 option on that team. It could go either way, but Brandon Ingram has such a great offensive skill set, and I just love the way he plays the game. His shot is good. He's one of the best ISO players in the NBA. But with that being said, Zion Williamson is just dominating. So give me your thoughts on who you think should make it.
I'm going to take the same 3 guys as you, Gobert, PG, and Zion. But it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to leave DeMar DeRozan out. I'm a huge, huge fan of what the Spurs have done this season. I think I've hyped them up probably on every single podcast this year. They're 6 in the West right now. 6. I mean, everyone was counting them out at the start of the season. And I've mentioned it 100 times how tough this year's Western Conference is. And I'm going to keep mentioning it because it's impressive that they're this high ahead of teams like the Nuggets, who made the Western Conference Finals last year, and the Warriors, who have a top 3 player in the league, and the Mavericks with Luka Doncic. They're ahead of all of these teams right now, thanks to amazing coaching, a lot of really good young guys, and the veteran leadership of DeMar DeRozan. If they do end up going the route of 3 guards and 4 forwards, I think I'm taking DeRozan as my 4th forward over
Brandon Ingram.
Unfortunately, over Brandon Ingram,
I
Christian
agree.
Wood, and Anthony Davis. It's tough because I think Anthony Davis deserves to get the bid. And then I think he'll get the injury. Someone will be an injury replacement for him.
Yeah.
So that might affect the shakeup of forwards and guards, whether they do 4 forwards and 3 guards, with Anthony Davis being one of those forwards, and then whoever his replacement being is another forward or maybe a guard. I'm not sure. But you can pretty much count Anthony Davis as 100% going to be getting a bid for it, because you've seen the Lakers without him. They are not even remotely close to a good team without Anthony Davis. I mean, I don't know if you've been watching them in the last couple of weeks.
Terrible.
This team does not. I'm sorry, LeBron, but this team does not win a playoff series without Anthony Davis. We're really seeing who the biggest. I can't say that he has the biggest impact because we haven't seen the Lakers without LeBron and with AD. But AD's impact on that Lakers team is just undisputed, as from what we've been seeing lately, and even showing just how valuable he is without him on the floor. Like you said, Gobert to me is 100% a lock. I think Gobert is getting way too much disrespect. Gobert has been amazing this year. 3rd best center in the league for sure. I don't even think it's close. I think he's the biggest reason why the Jazz are at the record they are at right now. That and the coaching and the system that they're in. But Gobert is a huge part of that system with the way he runs the pick and roll and the floor spacing with him in the paint. And then, Paul George has been great this year. Clippers number 2 option. He's been putting up actually pretty similar numbers to Kawhi who's starting. So I think he's got to be in there too. And then Zion, I think, is also got to be a lock with how good he is. I mean, he's shooting 62, 63% in the paint this season, which is pretty ridiculous for a second-year guy averaging around 25 points per game. So, and then you said Christian Wood too. Christian Wood 100% would have been in if he played the whole season. The Rockets, as soon as he got injured, went on a 7-game losing streak, I believe, and then ended up getting rid of Cousins. Completely fell apart without Christian Wood on the floor. I remember I was having this debate with a couple of the guys here, I think, about how I would have taken Christian Wood over Anthony Davis if Christian Wood was completely healthy. That said, when you're cutting it down to a final couple of guys, I think PG, Gobert, and Zion have got to be in there, and then Anthony Davis will be number 4. Injury replacement will probably be one of the 4th guard, and then or either DeRozan, because I think DeRozan definitely deserves a shot at it.
Now, quick question: if Nikola Vucevic was in the Western Conference and it was up for him or Zion, who are you taking? That's closer than I think it is out east, in my opinion.
No, I agree. That is close. I'm probably still taking Zion. This goes back to what we were saying earlier. Zion's more fun to watch in an All-Star game than Vucevic would be, personally. I'd rather see Zion throwing up the getting the lobs and putting down windmill dunks over people than seeing Vucevic do a nice fundamental post move and score in the paint, personally. But I think either of them would deserve it. Zion probably gets it because of his age and his what's the word for it? His exciting ability. Yeah.
That's exactly funny. Now, are there any other young players around, the ages of Zion and Jason Tatum and them that you think that we didn't mention today that you think could end up making it at some point during their career?
This is going to come out of left field. Keldon Johnson, San Antonio Spurs. Keldon Johnson will make 2 All-Star games in his career at a minimum. He's going to be a stud. Okay. I love Keldon Johnson. Another one that I have in mind also, Jaren Jackson Jr. for the Grizzlies. Get him healthy again. He's going to be showing up to All-Star games left and right in the future with Ja Morant.
Yeah, another player that didn't make it this year because of the COVID issues, but I think if he didn't make it, he would have definitely been in contention, is Karl Anthony Towns. The way he's been playing, I know the Timberwolves are the worst team in the NBA as we speak. But if he had played a little bit, I don't think they would be. And we still haven't seen him and D'Angelo Russell play together. So hopefully next year, if we see them play together, then both of them could possibly sneak into the All-Star game because they're both fantastic players. Looking at the teams right now and trying to think of other young players. But
shout out to Malik Beasley too as a guard. And he's nowhere near any of these other guys, but he's been dropping about 20 points per game for the Timberwolves this year. Could argue he's been their best player. Probably him and D'Lo have been right up there as the top 2, but Malik Beasley's been great, and I feel like he hasn't been getting any recognition for it.
Are there any rookies from this year that you think during their career, like sleepers. I think we all expect LaMelo Ball to make an All-Star game at some point. We all expect Anthony Edwards to possibly make one with his offensive skill set. Are there any other rookies that you could see making the All-Star game at some point in their career?
Another one out of left field, just because I'm all over the Spurs hype right now. Devin Vassell. I know he's been maybe like the least used rookie from the lottery this year, but I really liked what I saw from him in college. And Popovich loves to take his time with his rookies. I wouldn't be surprised if Vassell doesn't see the court much this year, the rest of the season, as he has been so far. But let Pop get his hands on him for 2 years, and he'll be coming out swinging in a couple of years. I think he'll be putting himself in some all-star contention because of that. I had another one that I was just thinking in my head that I completely forgot. Well, while I think about it, do you have any?
One player that I think is very underrated. I watched the Celtics play the other day, and I really liked Aaron Nesmith. Like his just like defensive IQ, it seems like, and his fit with that team. I think he could end up starting for them if one of those 2 stars leaves throughout their career and Aaron Nesmith stays with the Celtics. I just liked what he brings to the table, just offensively and defensively. So I could see him progressing into a very good player as well.
I remembered mine. I actually got 2, and they're both the same name. The Tyreses. We got Tyrese Maxey and Tyrese Halliburton.
Yes.
First off, gotta hype up my Sixers guy, Tyrese Maxey. Name another rookie that's dropped 39 points per game this year. I don't think you can, because Tyrese Maxey's the only one. And he's been slowing down a little bit lately. His minutes have decreased as we've had a lot of our guards come back healthier, with Seth Curry, Shake Milton both returning from injury. Maxey his role has been decreased a lot, but we saw what he can do when he gets the minutes, and he's a walking bucket.
Fair.
Maxey will be a huge part of the Sixers' future, I believe. And then Tyrese Halliburton has got to be the other one. I think he's another case of get him off the Kings and he'll succeed. But he's been incredibly
efficient. Love ripping that team.
Well, they deserve it because they waste so many careers.
That's true.
Halliburton is incredibly efficient, and I honestly think he's playing out of position right now. They have him at shooting guard. I've always seen him as more of a point guard than a shooting guard, but with De'Aaron Fox running the point, he's played a lot more off ball. But I think if Halliburton gets the keys to an NBA offense, he's shown that he has the IQ for it very easily, and he has the defense, he has the efficiency. I think all the Halliburton really needs right now is the touches and the confidence in the team to really hand him the reins, and he'll be a really, really good NBA point guard someday, probably an all-star.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So there's our all-star discussion. We got through all of it. I've got a couple of other questions real quick. We've seen some more trade rumors going around in the NBA. So to wrap it up, let's just discuss a couple of these. We mentioned Kyle Lowry and Kemba Walker last time. I'm still seeing rumors to the Sixers. Any thoughts on that?
Dwight Howard would have a field day with that one.
Yeah, with Kyle Lowry. Oh my God.
Right now, if I'm the Sixers, I would like Lowry because he gives that veteran presence championship. He already won a championship a couple years ago. He knows what it takes to bring a chip to a team. I think that'd be a huge plus for us in that area. But when you're just looking at how the Sixers are built right now, I'm not sure, because then you're pushing Ben Simmons out of the point guard spot again. And you know me, I've been a huge proponent for his entire career that Ben Simmons is a point guard and he works best at the point guard spot. I think the power forward experiment last year was atrocious and did not work at all. And it just overall made us a much more inferior team than we are when Ben's at the point guard. So bringing in Lowry, I'm not sure how that would affect that whole Simmons at point guard situation, but we would definitely improve as an overall team if Lowry was on the squad. And please keep Kemba Walker the hell away from Philly. I mean, I don't know if it's Boston or it's Kemba, because in pretty much every case where a player declines at Boston in the last 5 years, it's normally Boston and they go and thrive on another team. So I'm going to give Kemba the benefit of the doubt because Terry Rozier's balling right now, Gordon Hayward's balling right now, Kyrie Irving's balling right now, and meanwhile everyone in Boston isn't. So I'm going to place the blame on Boston more than Kemba. But no, I still don't want him anywhere near Philly, because I think if it is Kemba's issue, then we would probably overpay for him and overtrade for him, give up a lot of really key role players that have helped us get where we are, which I would not want to do.
That's fair. One last player that I want to discuss. I've seen recent rumors. Even though this team is a little bit on a win streak and they're sitting at the 9th seed right now in the Western Conference in the Dallas Mavericks, Kristaps Porzingis has gotten brought up in a couple trade rumors recently. I saw that they end up calling the Golden State Warriors to see what the asking price would be for Kristaps Porzingis. What do you think about that? Do you think that him and Luka are going to stay together for the future, or do you think it won't work eventually?
I think they're going to stay together. I see this as kind of like a motivating thing where like, oh, they're going to trade their second best player because they're struggling. But then like all of a sudden Porzingis and Luka go on a roll. I won't deny, I think Porzingis has been awful this year. If you watch them play, he's been a really net negative on the floor for that Mavericks team. Not looking at all like the guy that we saw in the playoffs last year when he was healthy. He's a 7'3", and he's shooting 40% from the field. As a guard and as people, we're both kind of short when it comes to basketball. That hurts. I know both of us would think that hurts. If we were 7'3", I feel like you got to be shooting a better percentage from the field. He settles for bad shots a lot. He's not aggressive in the paint at all. He's basically a 7'3" Davis Bertans.
Yeah.
That's a pretty brutal way of saying it. Offensively, defensively, he's had an okay impact. He's still a good shot blocker, but I feel like he's never really in the right spots when you watch him. His overall help defense is not what it should be for a big man, especially for him playing center. I've always seen him as more of a power forward, as we saw last week. That said, the Mavericks, who are a team definitely on the up right now, in overall as a franchise with Luka Doncic, they're not going to go ahead and trade their second best player midway through a season just because they're just short of the playoffs. I would be very, very shocked if they did. And if they do trade Porzingis, I think the only way they would is if they think they're getting the best player in the trade, if they're getting someone better in return.
I saw a lot of rumors that the Mavericks are interested in that Minnesota Timberwolves pick that the Golden State Warriors have right now. And to me, I'm over here like, if that ends up being, the 4th overall pick, then it would be interesting to see it. But at the same time, with Kristaps, and I think they're starting to gel right now. With Luka, I wouldn't look to make a deal yet. I hope that what you said is true, and the fact that they're just going to be like, hey, we were gonna trade you, and the next thing you know, he comes out averaging 24 points per game, 60% shooting from the field, and plays out of his mind.
Would you like that trade for Golden State? If Golden State were to put a package around that pick and maybe one or two other guys for
depending who the guy is, I would say, yeah. I think Steph Curry and Kristaps Porzingis pick and roll would be incredible, but I don't think right now I'd want to give up a guy like Andrew Wiggins. I've seen like a lot of people saying no, we'll keep James Wiseman, because I don't know if Wiseman would be involved in the deal because they're two young players. I'm right now. I've watched a lot of the Warriors. Wiseman doesn't look fantastic. He got injured for a little bit. I'm not going to quit on him by any means because he's 7'1". I think he'd be fantastic. Hasheem Thabeet still is in the back of my mind, though, and it kind of scares me. But no, I think Wiseman's going to be a very good player, and I would not want to give up Wiseman. The only player I'd possibly consider giving up would be like a Kelly Oubre, because he's not on the biggest contracts. But I don't even know if I'd do that.
Oubre, the pick, and Draymond Green for Kristaps Porzingis.
No.
Do it. No,
I don't care how many technical fouls Draymond Green gets and how many games he sells us. I do not want Draymond Green to leave this team. I would hate Draymond Green. To me is like with Steph Curry and a Warrior for life. Mm-hmm. Once he gets his act together, I know he kind of sold us that game against Charlotte. But that was also an incredible shot by Terry Rozier over Juan Toscano Anderson. And I like the chemistry that the Warriors have built right now when glue guys like Looney comes back, and then we got Wiseman being the player that we hope he will be eventually. I'm not going to get rid of that right now, unless I think the only player I'd be willing to give up is Kelly Oubre, because I'd slide Wiggins to the 2 and throw like a Juan Toscano in at the 3 or something. I think, honestly, he's been playing fantastic. And him and like Michael Mulder, 2 players I'd never would have talked about before this year. They've been such good role players. And even possibly throwing in Kent Bazemore into that starting lineup, his playmaking ability and defense has been great. So I'd be interested to see if we did that and then possibly run a lineup of like Draymond at the 3, Kristaps at the 4, and Wiseman at the 5. That would be just bizarre. brainstorming, but I can see. I just don't think what we're giving up would be good enough. So
yeah, no, that makes sense. And both of us value Draymond a lot more than the average NBA fan does.
Yes.
I mean, I agree with you. I would not make that trade if I'm Golden State, especially with the way Porzingis has been playing lately. And I think this upcoming draft class is definitely I think is probably the best draft class we've seen in the last couple of years or so, last 3 or 4 years. So if I'm Golden State, I'm holding on to that pick for now.
Yeah, what I think would be really funny if they end up trading that pick away, like at the trade deadline, for a player that could help them now. And the next thing you know, the Timberwolves fall in the bottom 3 and the Timberwolves keep the pick and the guys just gave up that player for nothing. I think that's kind of what I'm hoping for, because right now the Timberwolves are the worst team in the NBA. So we'll see how the lottery falls. Hopefully there could be some, envelope thingy and the Warriors end up, they get the 4th pick in the draft. But
and before we go, I gotta mention Ryan Saunders. You've been saying it from the beginning. How do you feel? How do you feel?
Oh my God, it is about damn time. Finally, he gets fired. I love the hiring. I think any guy, especially the assistant guy under Nick Nurse, the Raptors just seem to know what they're doing when they hire coaches. I know the Raptors started off the year really bad. They're sitting above the Boston Celtics right now at the 5 seed. I think that is just fantastic. And I think a lot of that turnaround has to do with the coaching ability and just Nick Nurse putting confidence in his guys. Start off the season, we saw Fred VanVleet. We were saying, I think maybe he was a little overpaid. Maybe he should have gone to a different team like the Knicks, who were playing fantastic. No, this team, they finally gelled. Pascal Siakam. Oh, real quick, did you see the Shaq comment on TV when this was so funny when after the game, Shaq wanted to say Siakam's a better offensive player than Giannis, and then Ernest said something like, "Do you want to talk about Pascal?" He goes, "No, I want to talk about Siakam." It just shows that these guys have no idea what the hell they're talking about. Sometimes I think it was so funny, but. They signed the assistant coach of the Raptors. He's going to come in and bring a good attitude, a winning attitude that this program has not had for what seems like forever. Hopefully, D'Angelo Russell can come back and just play his role on this team next to Malik Beasley, start running it. Finally, Anthony Edwards started running the 3, and he's been playing fantastic since he's been inserted in the starting lineup. Maybe they'll finally figure out that power forward position. Jared Vanderbilt.
Naz Reid.
Naz Reid's more of a center, which is why I'd be like, it's kind of iffy. But Cat can stretch the floor. If you have
Karl Anthony Towns can stretch the floor. If you've got Naz Reid playing power forward, even though he'd be a bigger power forward, he could attack the paint and let Cat stretch the floor a little more. I don't know. That's not a bad squad. The one thing I wanted to mention is I like the hire a little. I know this came out a little bit. I know Dame and CJ both mentioned that they decided not to hire David Vanterpool, who was their assistant that came from Portland, who worked in Portland the last 7 or 8 years, which I think that was a very good point by them, because I think I'm a huge fan of David Vanterpool. I think he was a huge part of the success in Portland over the last 7 or 8 years, and I was really hoping that Minnesota would give him the job. But overall, I think they got a good coaching staff going with both Finch and Vanterpool now. So I can't argue. And they have all the pieces. They have the young guys. They have a coaching staff now. They just need to
swear to God,
figure something else out.
If D'Lo comes back healthy and I see Ricky Rubio in that starting lineup again, I will do a whole podcast by myself to talk about how bad I hate the Minnesota Timberwolves. But finally, Ryan Sanders is gone.
Next post on Backcourt Press is going to be the Timberwolves best player on every Timberwolves team. So we'll get to see how useless that franchise has been whenever Kevin Garnett is not on the team.
Exactly. It's been a good podcast discussing the All-Star. I bet you the reserves will probably end up coming out now in the next 20 minutes, because that's just how our timing tends to work. But thank you to everyone who tuned in. It's been a fun podcast, and we'll figure out a time for next week or possibly later this week. Once again, follow us on Instagram at Backcourt Press, Twitter at Backcourt Press _, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And look out for this podcast. It is possibly going to be coming out soon on iTunes and Spotify and a bunch of different other streaming platforms, which is crazy to say that we're going to have a podcast on Spotify and iTunes, but it's a possibility. So
it's wild.
It's crazy. Thank you all for tuning in. It's been Backcourt Press NBA Talk, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.